All right, again, welcome. This is the 2025 new contract training. We are going to go over the basics of new contracts. Good news for all my veteran people out there. No new changes. Woohoo! Oop, I hear somebody still got their microphone on. Let me mute everyone. There we go. All right. So yay you, right? Did we ever think that we'd get to the day where I know, thank you, Jennifer, where we'd ever get to the day where we didn't have just one more change every year? Can we just be something consistent? So wonderful news to start off our training today. So, I mentioned that we will be recording this training. Once that recording is put out there, it will be on our YouTube channel. So if you've not been to our Meta Solutions Fiscal page before, we have, this is a great point for resources. So I'm going to go ahead and put that link in our chat. If you are a newer payroll person and you've just not ever been out there before, this is where you can find our YouTube channel. And then also, we do those roundtables once a month. You're going to be able to find those at the bottom of the page. My apologies for the scroll, underneath the roundtable discussions area. Okay. When we are talking, there is a folder here for USPS, obviously, along with some other things we have out there. And I just want to point out to you that within here, we do have some spreadsheet templates, some information, or there used to be some information on like summer payrolls. In fact, let me see if we have that here. Yeah, for setting up or mapping out your summer payrolls. So we're going to kind of briefly go over that when we get into compensations. So what does mapping out your summer pays? Well, just kind of ensuring that your pay groups, when you bring them in to initialization for their first pay on contract, to make sure that all of their days are getting brought in on that first payroll for them. So we're going to cover that as well. All right. So let's get into our application, and we're going to get started with some foundational pieces on our training. So one of the very forefront things that you want to have down is to make sure that you have your job calendars for next year created, okay? That needs to be done prior to doing any of your new contracts. And I just want to remind some folks, or even bring attention to folks, how job calendars and pay groups work with payroll. Because we do have several newer payroll folks on here that have been hired throughout the year and maybe didn't get to enjoy new contracts last year. So I'm going to go into pay groups. So that can be found under core. So what I want to bring to your attention is, again, I am in a demo account, so some of this just does not make a whole lot of hot sense. But our pay groups, if you think about it, when we initialize payroll, right? What's one of the main things that is on the payroll initialization screen? It's our pay groups, right? Our buckets into which we have added our employees to. That makes a major impact on service days. Okay. So when you look at a pay group, okay, I'm going to pick on one that I have updated here. So I'm going to pick on my 260 pay group. When I go into that pay group, I want you to see that what is associated to a pay group is a job calendar. Okay. So when we add a pay group onto an employee's position record, and then we add a compensation record associated to that position, what happens is we see the pay group on that position record. And then when we add a compensation, that calendar that is tied to that pay group by default is stamped on there. Okay. We can always override it on the compensation record, but job calendars are tied to pay groups. Okay, I'm going to show you an example. If you've not ever seen this before, don't know, a lot of our veteran folks do. If I come up here and right click on the tab, okay, right here at the top, I'm on my tab for USPS, and I right click, I can go down to duplicate, and it's going to create me another application of my USPS without me having to log in. Okay, I'm always still surprised how many people don't know that they can do that, and this is one of the biggest time savers ever. But I want to show you exactly. Again, this may be repeat for some of our veteran folks, so bear with us. Sometimes it bears repeating. If we go on to position, and I'm going to look at position, you'll notice here is our pay group, right? That's great. That rules the world as far as this employee's position coming into payroll. When I choose my 260 group, whatever dates I assign, that's what's going to get stamped to this employee. So, of course, you see pay group here, but then to see the associated job calendar, that's going to be on the compensation, right? Because the compensation's where it's important for the days to be applied. Okay, job calendar right here. Okay. So I just wanted to again remind you um, where pay groups are and what is associated to that pay group, and that is the job calendar. Let's say, for example, on this employee, let's say, for example, you have teachers, right? And all of your teachers are on a 185-day job calendar. But you also have a couple part-time teachers. Well, you really don't want to make a special pay group for them, but you also don't want a 185-day job calendar on them, right? You can then, on their compensation, go in and change that job calendar to a part-time calendar, okay? But still keeping them all in the same pay group bucket. All right. Are there any questions on pay groups and associated job calendars? One of the things that I have found, if you go to the more area, you can pull in so you can make sure you have the right calendars tied to that. You can, under job calendar, pull in type and description. Okay, you can pull in archive too, if you wish. And when I close that, that is then going to remind me of what job calendars I have associated to my pay groups. Because, for example, what if you have a pay group and you're like, I don't understand why they're not getting all the days. I created the job calendar. Okay, well, maybe you accidentally have an incorrect or one that you didn't intend job calendar tied to it. So it is worth coming in here and checking and making sure that you have the right associated calendars with your pay group. I get questions, our team gets questions. I really want to do some pay group cleanup. What's the best time of year to do that? In between contracts, okay? You've paid off one and you need to, you're starting new ones. That is the best time, the cleanest time to do any changes. Was just working with the district. They had a handful of people in one pay group, but some of them started on one date for their first pay for contract, and half of the group started the second pay in August. And for start days and everything like that, we split them out. We're going to be doing that this summer for them. So those would be times and cases when you would want to do something like that. All right. So now let's go into our job calendars. Okay. So again, I noted before you do any of your fiscal 26 new contracts, it's important to come in here and create your job calendars for next year. Um, and also create your default. Everyone tends to forget about the default calendar, right? Creating your default calendar, the one that's no work days, right? You're like, well, there's no work days. Why do I need to even create one? Believe it or not, the system knows whether you've created it or not. So I don't have one in here labeled DEF. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do create. So if you've not done a job calendar before, I don't want to undersimplify it, but it is one of the easiest things that you're going to do in USPS and a little fun. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this default. Okay. This is going to be our default. We're going to give it a description of no work days. So who is this calendar going to be tied to? mostly your subs, right? Anybody that's getting attendance days, that type of situation. So an easy way to do this is I'm going to create it for my whole fiscal year. So I'm going to put in 0701 2025 to 0630 2026. I do not want work days. So I'm going to choose none. And I'm going to mass add. Now, I would love to say there's going to be a bells or whistles or a hand that reaches out and said, nice job, it's completed. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Um, there is a feedback ticket out there to pop up and say one has been created, but there was a very fine blue bar that went across the top. And once you've done that, you can just click save and be comfortable with that. Okay, so that's how you create your default calendar. If you have calendars from last year that you want to copy over to this next school year, you can do that. Okay, so in order to do that, we would use our copy feature. Okay, and I'm going to pull from my existing calendar, which is teacher. I'm going to give it a start date of whenever your school year starts. I can't remember what I did this year. Pardon. I'm going to say the 18th. And we're going to go through that whole next year. So I just might as well go ahead and create. Actually, I wanted, yeah, I won't. Here we go. And I'm going to copy it over to, let's say, AFG. Okay, let's say this is like an aides, teachers, cook, or excuse me, aides, cooks, bus drivers type of thing, because I don't think I have one created in here. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to take my existing teacher calendar. So let's say I went in and I updated my teacher calendar for FY26. Everything looks golden. I've made sure all of the days are in there. They're fabulous. Then I can take that one and without having to manually update the rest of them, which would be similar ones, like my aides, cook, and bus driver, I can simply copy those over and click on copy. And then when I go up to my AFG one, I would be able to see if I added teacher days in there, which I can't remember if I did or not. Yes, I did. Thank goodness. When I was preparing for this, it's been a hot minute, so I want to make sure everything was in place. Then all those days are going to copy over for you. And then, for example, let's say this one is a cook or an aide or a bus driver. Well, their differences between teacher and the rest of them are your classified staff are getting holidays. Okay? All right, easy peasy. What you can do then, instead of going into each calendar and adding those, you can go in and do mass change. Okay, so let me show you how that works. So if I choose, let's say what's going to be Labor Day this year, for example, September 1st. I want to update it to a holiday, and I'm going to choose my aide, my cook, and my bus driver groups. And I click on save. That then will automatically, without me having to manually go into each one of these, I can go into that calendar, go look at September, and see that that holiday has been added. Okay? All right. I see a couple questions. Are we good, team? Good deal. All right. Do we have any questions on pay groups or job calendars? I do have the USPS link up here. I am going to grab when it refreshes. The job calendar documentation. So a lot of the documentation is already out there in USPS for you on how to do some of these things, but I do know that we have a couple folks that have not built job calendars before. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in the chat. So that is the documentation on how to create job calendars. All right. All right. So let's dig in. If no one has any other questions on pay groups or job calendars, again, if you have any questions on those, please feel free at any time to reach out to our team and we will help you along with those. Okay. Oh, one thing I want to not forget to show you is if I go down to my teacher calendar or any calendar, let me show you real quick this custom start and stop. Let's say you've gone in and created right? Your calendar for this year, and you want to make sure you have everything accounted for, go in and put the first day, or you can put, if they don't like teachers, they don't work the first part of August. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And let's say I put in 07/31 because we know they don't work July of the next year. You see how this start and stop date updates this field right here, custom date range, okay? Teachers only have work days. If you have aides, cooks, or bus drivers, or any other classified staff, you're going to probably see holidays. So you're going to add those two together to get your total work days. This tool is the best thing since sliced bread. And not only is this the best thing since sliced bread, for doing new non-contracts or creating your job calendars, but if you have a mid-year payoff or changes to contracts or compensations, or you're just checking to make sure your compensation's good on the days worked, right? This is the best area ever. Beats printing out a calendar and counting days. Okay, so this is proof in the pudding. Okay, right here. This is a great tool. All right. All right, let's move on. Okay, so to find new contracts, we're going to go to processing and new contracts. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick Morgan out of here because that's a cheat. I did that earlier. You'll see her in just a little bit. All right, so there are 4 ways to add new contracts, but I'm not going to cover the 4th way, mostly because I've never assisted a district in doing that. I've never heard that it is mostly used because the first 3 are way more accurate and a lot less frustrating. So we're not even going to talk about number 4. So the first one that we're going to cover is simply by copying, which is like creating a new contract. So before I assume and before I get ahead of myself, I want to explain to our new payroll people out there. This new contract area that you're seeing on my screen right now is a glorified sandbox. Okay? Nothing that you do in here is impacting your payroll processing as long as it's in this new contract maintenance area. Okay? So whether I'm in this tab here, new contract maintenance, whether I'm in mass copy, whether I'm in import new contracts or salary notices, I want you to know that this is a safe space. Okay? It is only when we activate is when they become real. Okay? For those classic people out there, purge, right? So we've not hurt anybody or touched anything until we do activate, but we're going to give you a lot of safety nets before you get there. Okay? We're going to give you those processes. All right? So what is or how do records get brought in to new contract? From existing compensations. Okay, so I know we kind of go along and we just assume everybody knows, well, when you click on copy and create, it just magically appears. Well, where is it appearing from? It's appearing from or bringing in the existing compensation record. That way we can update it. Okay, so I don't want to assume everyone knows that. So again, number one way of doing it is bringing in one record. Okay, so I'm going to use the example of bringing in my Morgan Bailey. Okay, I'm going to choose, she has 2 positions. I'm choosing number 1. Okay, it is new contract. Let me use this drop down. By default, because this is the one most used, new contract comes in by default. Okay, great, because that's exactly what we need. All right, so it's taken a step away from us. Now, for Morgan, what do I want my new contract start date to be? And what do I want my new contract stop date to be? So I'm going to hit pause and we're going to talk about those dates for a moment. Okay. When it says contract start here, it really needs to say compensation start, right? All of us old school folks, we know that it's a contract start, but the language barrier just we just need to get everybody caught up because we're so definitive in this terminology, this field. But I want to put everyone's mind to ease. When it says contract start date, please know that that means compensation start date or compensation stop date. Okay, so I want to say that first, especially for our new folks out there. So the contract start date needs to be or needs to be inclusive of the first day that employee is going to work and be paid for. Okay, so for my Morgan Bailey, her contract starts 7/1. That is the first day on her job calendar. So I want to put in 07/01/2025. My contract stop date needs to be inclusive of the last day that she's going to work and also a date within the final pay that she's being paid on. Now, for Morgan here, she's a 260-day employee. She's July 1st to June 30th, so that makes that easy, right? I'm going to do that. Now, when it comes to teachers, right? When it comes to teachers on stop dates, typically our teachers are done in May or early June. Okay, that's great. However, your contract stop date needs to also be inclusive of your pay date range for their final pay. Okay, so let me hit pause for a second. For example, let's say your teacher, their final pay is going to be on this FY26 contract is going to be August 30th of 2026. Your pay date range for that 30th pay is going to be August 1st through August 15th. Our recommendation to you is to use the earliest date in that date range of 8/1. That way, the stop date doesn't interfere with the next year's compensation record. Okay? So if you have any questions on that, please, please, please send us. We love it when you ask permission. We also like it when you ask forgiveness. Permission is like way better. So please ask us and we will help you with what best accommodates you. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and click create. Anytime that you are creating a record in the new contract area, it is always going to land in this new contract maintenance grid. This is home base. Okay, so this is what I lovingly call the hot tub or the pool. This is where everybody's hanging out until we kick them out of the pool until it's break time. Okay, so now that we have this in here, and one of the reasons we show you this first is it's good to have an understanding whether you're bringing these in individually, whether you're bringing them in by pay group, or whether you're doing an import. It's important that you understand how things are working. So one of the first steps when we do this is not to go right in and start changing dates and amounts and everything. But the key is as soon as you click create, hit clear. Okay. This clears out all the old values. That way your calculations will come out accurately. Okay. You will notice that it has our type tied to it. It has our job calendar. Okay. We don't need some of these things. They are brought in. If you've been in redesign long enough, you know just because there's a field that's there does not mean you have to fill it in. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to start updating things. So for new description, I'm going to put FY26, and I think she is on my later notes a treasurer. Okay. My new label. Okay. I'm going to copy paste, honestly. Let me tell you why. If you have or if you have not been with redesign and done a new year for EMIS, you know that our compensation descriptions and or our labels are our filtering tool for archiving old records. Okay. So that's one of the reasons that SSDT and Meta, we recommend when you do these that you always put the fiscal year in front of it. It makes searching in any of the grids so much easier to find those associated records. Okay. Secondly, I want to remind you that the label field is what the employee sees on their pay stub. Okay, so if you weren't aware of that, that's important, right? That they see that. So we're going to update. Again, this is going to be the compensations new description, not the position description, but also our new label. You'll notice our start date and stop dates have come in, and that's when we created that position. We copied that in. It went ahead and filled that in for us. Okay. The biweekly plan, this is going to again come in based on the old compensation. So Morgan's old compensation had biweekly, so that's what's brought in. We have a couple districts out there that are going from 26 to 24 pays. When you are creating new contracts for next year and you're doing it over the summer, winner, winner, chicken dinner, change it here. Okay. Make sure you're changing this so it says semi-monthly if you're doing a 26 to 24 pays. Okay. The new daily, or excuse me, the new pay unit, we're going to leave that. We are not, again, not going to fill in the new unit amount. We can put in retirement hours. She evidently did not have any come over. Okay. We are gonna not in this case not worry about supplemental tax option. We're not worried about days work because we know that gets calculated. Work days, that's correct. This is something you want to make sure you're looking at if they were a late hire last year. Let's say they were a late hire and only had 121 days because they came in late. You're going to want to make sure to update that. Okay, make sure you put your eyes on that. And then of course you want to make sure you have new hours in day. All right. Position information. Okay. This has been new within the last couple years. Yes, you can indeed update position information. I'm waiting to hear back from SSDT on the import options for this. So we're going to cover that because you can bring it in on your import. But when I tested it a lot, it never updated in my new contract grid, but when I activated it, it updated the record. So I think that's a bug as to why the import's not updating these records on the position, but I will send out a follow-up email to everybody on that, but we are going to talk about it during import. But this is a great time if you want to clean up stuff, right? I don't want my position record to say FY26 treasurer because remember, the position is the record that stays consistent over the years. The only thing that changes is the compensation. So if you wanted to do some cleanup, and let's say you want some consistency in your district as far as your position description goes, have happy, okay? We're not changing the pay group, not changing the code or department. Now, if you have a teacher that's going to be changing building codes and department codes, please feel free to change that here. Okay, the FTE position start date, we're not going to change because that's when they actually started that position. Remember, you can have one employee with multiple positions. Okay, always double check the retirement code. Okay, if we have a couple districts that are doing kind of an overhaul on their EMIS reporting for position codes. This is where, if you're creating a new compensation for next year and you want to update that position, let's say they're going from a 230 to a 212 for fiscal 26, this is where you would make that change. Okay. The EMIS FTE, that's actually the reportable field right there. So you want to make sure you have that filled in. Here's something I want to really draw to your attention. This EMIS contract amount, EMIS work days, and EMIS hours in the day, okay? The only time These three fields, again, EMIS contract amount, EMIS workdays, and EMIS hours in the day should be used. Is it mid-contract change? Let's say you have somebody that starts off with bachelor's, they get their master's, so you're going to move them up, so you're going to change their compensation, okay? Well, for EMIS reporting, we need to report that higher amount. So then you would come in here to the position record and update those. But the way the EMIS collection works is it goes from employee to position record to compensation record. So if it's already getting the EMIS collection, already getting the contract amount, the work days and hours in day from the compensation, pop quiz. Do we need to put these amounts in these override fields? Anybody in chat? I'll take anybody in chat. Thank you. Thank you for everybody that piped in. I appreciate that. No, so if you see these, this is a great time to clean this up. So I'm going to remove this stuff. Okay, now I am going to give you another example. If this is a straight up teacher or straight up treasurer, right? And it's a brand new year, I do not need to put anything in those EMIS override fields, all three of them. Now, if you have a teacher who's going to be splitting, right, between an elementary building and intermediate or junior high building, you could go ahead and put that first half in here. Let's say they're doing an easy peasy half and half. You could go ahead and update that information here. And then after the dust settles and you have new contracts, then you could do a mass load to the other position that's out there. But only in rare occasions will you ever need to use those override fields. Okay. So we want to make sure that you're cleaning that stuff out because I have seen districts have contract amounts in there that are 5 years or older. So what's happening is when they're doing their EMIS collection and it sees amounts in these override fields, it's stopping right there. It's taking that old value and not reporting that current fiscal year value. Okay, so that's the importance of cleaning that up. All right, thank you. Okay, so building IRN, assignment area, employee check, again, any of those can be updated. New calendar start date, yes. Okay, this is another field that must be entered for new contracts. Okay, no more classic days. No more days of just letting that calendar start date ride because it didn't matter back then. So your calendar start date, 9 times out of 10, is going to match your compensation start date. Your calendar start date should always be the first day worked on the job calendar. Okay. We do not want to enter a calendar stop date on a compensation unless they leave mid-year. Okay. Remember our calendar start or calendar dates, they're used for service day reporting for retirement, ODJFS weeks, and EMIS. Okay. All right. Again, we don't want to enter in the new paper period, but we do. Okay, finally, right? We're to an area where we want to enter information in. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to enter in our new contract amount for our treasurer. Okay. So I'm entering, actually, I'm going to take out obligation. I'm going to enter in the new contract amount and that's it. Okay. This is a district defined field. Not everybody uses that, but some people use the type. Okay. You want to make sure you're verifying the pays and contract. Remember, I gave you that scenario. If somebody starts mid-year, this might say 17 pays. Make sure it says either 26 or 24. Okay. And then if you're using salary schedules, you can then come in here and update these accordingly for you all. Okay, so one more thing before we do the calculate is this add payroll account. Okay, so everyone that's on, they're like, I don't want to add a new payroll account. I want to use the old one. Okay, great. Well, that's fine. If you'll notice, it says payroll accounts only required if different than the old compensation. Okay, so here's what I want to make note of. How many people pay from grants? Yep, a lot, right? So this is a time, if you know, if this was a teacher, again, I know I'm messing with the treasurer here, but if you know that account code is going to change to a 2026 account code, you can come in here and add that, okay? Then once you activate this and pay it, what it's going to do is it's going to add that payroll account to your payroll accounts, and it's going to automatically put a stop date on the old ones. Okay, let me repeat that. When adding a new payroll account after activation, all of the old payroll accounts, whether it be fixed or percent, will get a stop date entered with the day before the new contract begins. Now, if you don't want the rest of them stopped, then you need to wait until after you activate, and you would go in and manually update those through payroll accounts. Did I hear somebody, or was that just me? Are we good? No questions? Okay. So this is cool. So if you already know that you've got somebody that's going to be, doing grant monies out of FY26, come in and add those, right? All right. I'm just deleting that line. Any questions before I hit calculate? So Beth is at, what is extended service field? Sorry, I missed it. Where am I even seeing that? I must have blown right by that. Oh, I honestly can't answer that. I don't know that I've ever used that field. I know it's not used in calculation for payroll. So Tanya, I might have to, oh, looks like somebody followed up on that. I may need to look at the SSDT documentation for that field as well. And it is used for, sorry, I did know that. Sorry, I didn't know if you needed the implication for payroll on here. It is on the position itself. Beth has asked calendar start date. We were instructed that we did not have to change that date as long as the employee is staying in the same position. I am going to clarify that, Beth, and that needs to be updated per the SSDT. This calendar start date, if you go to the new contract documentation, is actually a recommendation by the SSDT. In fact, this is a good time for me to. This is the SSDT's new contract documentation. I'm going to pop that in the chat box. Beth, thank you for asking that question. And if you do imports, it's super easy. You can just copy that field in. That way you ensure that they're the same for that. All right. Good deal. Any other questions before I do calculate? Okay, so remember, I did not fill in the unit amount, did not fill in the paper period, didn't fill in the obligation. Oh, I do need to mark, dear Lord, I almost missed that. The new stretch pay. Okay, we want to make sure we mark these stretch pay. And I'm going to hit on calculate. When we do this, green is good, okay? It's letting you know that when you calculated, the pay per period has been calculated based upon contract values. So contract values were the contract amount that I entered and the number of pays, right? Because remember they're daily. And the unit amount has been calculated upon the contract values. Again, number of pays and daily. So when I look at this record, I'll note that I now have a new unit amount. So I'm able to take this times my 260, or you can do it backwards, doesn't matter to me, and it gets $80,000. Okay? Again, you could do it backwards, forwards, doesn't matter. You could take 80 divided by 260 and get that, however your math works. And then if I take the 80,000 divided by 26 pays, that's going to give me my new pay per period. Okay? We, as Fiscal, highly encourage you to let the system do the calculation, okay? Because that's going to be a great way to double check your math on your spreadsheets, okay? Because things happen. Okay, so it's always good to have an external spreadsheet. It's always good to write those totals down, have your 26 pays, 24 pays, have your number of days, do that math, and then double check to what the system's saying. Okay, once you're good, then we can click on save. All right. Any questions on that? Team, is there anything I'm missing or need to cover? Okay. All right. I'm gonna dump Morgan out of there, even though we did all that work. Um, You're right. So Missy, yes. Missy, I did not click the new primary compensation. You totally can do that. I was going to show you when we activate it. It actually does ask you when you go to activate it if you want to mark them all as primary. So Missy, that is an awesome question. If you happen to miss check marking that new compensation as the primary one, there's a uh, how do I want to say that? It keeps you safe. There's a safety net that asks you to mark them all later on. So Missy, great question. Thank you so much for catching that. Yep. And when I get some of these others at the end, the import, I'll definitely show you that. Thank you. Thank you. Just so everybody knows, well, I'll do it on the next group here where that flag was at. So that's number one, okay, adding them in individually. Then we're going to go to mass copy compensations. You're like, mass copy. Well, that just freaks me out. What does that mean? Well, again, remember, we're doing everything in the safe space. We're doing everything in the sandbox. So you're not changing your next payroll, okay? So we're going to keep it simple. And what we're going to do is it does ask you, select existing compensations to mass copy to new contracts. In other words, based on you want to make sure their job status is active, right? Do you want to include archived employees? Well, for our instance today, no. And honestly, I've never seen a time when we do that. And do you want to include archive compensations? Okay. You can also select employees by compensation active as of dates, so start dates. But for this purpose, we're going to keep it simple. I'm going to pick one of my pay groups. I'm going to pick my July 1st start pay group. And then again, remember when I did the individual copy? Okay, that was example number one, how you could do it. This is basically asking me the same questions. Okay, with this pay group of people, what do I want my start date to be? And what do I want my stop date to be? Okay, the great thing about this is once you add these employees in, notice what it does here at the bottom. Excuse me. 6 compensations currently are ready to build. It's going to pull in all 6 of your existing people. So this is a great way to double check that you've got everybody in the pool. Okay. So again, if I take this out, you'll notice all those people go away down the bottom and it says 0 compensations. Okay. So I just wanted you to see that behavior. Okay. At this point, I have not changed anything on anybody yet. All I'm doing is inviting a group to the pool. Okay. So I'm going to click on build new contracts. Date. Oh, well, it helps if I put the right ending date. Pardon me. It's good to see errors. We know how to, we're not all on super on task on that. All right. So you'll notice that all 6 of my people down here disappeared. You're like, where'd they go? Remember what I said? Everybody goes back to the pool. Okay. So we're going to click on new contract maintenance and everyone is in the pool now. So again, number 1 was bringing an individual record in. Number 2 option is the mass copy option that you could bring in by pay group. Okay. The reason we show you number 1 is because now you have to manually go into each of these records and do exactly what we did with Morgan Bailey. Okay, we would click on edit, we would click on clear, and again, we would go fill all those that information in that we filled in earlier. Okay, and then we would save. Okay, I'm going to take a moment here and talk about this grid. Okay, because if you are new to payroll, or even if you were new to payroll last year and honest to goodness, you were just going through the motions just to get it done, right? We have some tips that can really help you in this sandbox. Okay. So you'll notice it's a grid like the rest of USPS, and it has a more option and it has a report option. Okay. This is one of the best tools for new contracts because before you activate any of your contracts, you could pull down an Excel data report, add up all of your biweekly amounts or your per pay amounts, excuse me, any of your per pay amounts. Okay, let's see, I have 6 people in here and they're all $1,000 a pay. Well, when I go look at my payroll report and I'm looking at this pay group, what should my grand total on that pay report be for this pay group? $6,000. Okay, so this is a great tool to use for balancing your payroll when you initialize. Okay, so let's talk about this for a moment. You'll notice in this grid, and everybody's different, so however I have it set up, you do not have to have it set up this way. But in my little brain, it makes sense. So I want the type in. I have my employee number, their name, obviously, the position in there, new description. I've not edited any of these records, so it's not going to say anything in here yet. It's got my new label. Again, not edited records yet. As soon as I update that, that's going to show. The retirement system, double check this column. Okay, triple check this column. Make sure everybody that's in there should be one or the other. You can filter, do whatever. New stretch pay. You always want to make sure this is true. Okay, so I've got an outlier here, Morgan, we would have to change. Okay. These are the old amounts. Remember, I just brought in these compensation records. So these are last year's totals. When I go update these records, it's going to show the proper amount. Then it goes from contract amount to obligation to my unit, to the daily unit or the pay unit, how many work days they have, how many hours in the day, the new unit amount. So I should be able to go across the board, right? Take my new contract amount divided by 260 and come up with my unit amount. Okay. Then, same manner, I take my new contract amount, come over here to my number of pays. That divided by that should equal my new pay per period. Okay. Set it up so it makes sense for you when you're doing your calculation. When I run my report, I would go into that pay period column, do a sum for all of them, and again, that's going to match my payroll report. Again, this is all just additional information. When we clear the fields out, those will clear, making sure your pay plan's in there, your salary schedule. So when you get done, you're going to be able to download a report that has all of your information. Save it to a folder for your FY26 contracts. Okay, that way you have proof of what you did. Let me show you the more area. Again, for those that haven't ventured out here a lot, this more area should be looked at like a file cabinet. Okay, file cabinet based on whatever grid I'm in. Okay, so I am in new contracts. So that is our file cabinet. If you see that as a file cabinet, and each one of these, I call them carrots, that are on the far left, they're a drawer within that file cabinet. Okay, so if I close old compensation, I'm not going to see any of the files or the fields within that drawer. Okay, I want to draw specific attention to old compensation record information, and then let's go to the bottom. There is an area called new compensation. Okay. It hasn't happened for a long time, but I know we have a lot of new people on the call. Is when we first got into redesign in this new contracts area, all that we saw was old compensation amounts. So when we updated a record and saved it, they weren't showing in the grid. Well, that's because it was still showing the old values. So one of the first things I do is I go in and I remove a lot of the old compensation totals, and you're going to know the new ones because it says right here in the header, new salary schedule, back here, it says new hours and day, new contract day work, new pays and contract. Okay. So it's worth your time to go into this and set up your grid accordingly. Your new per pay period, new contract amount, obligation, all of those fields. Okay. Then when you close that, that's going to be updated. You can organize it however you want. Come in here, do an Excel data report, name it FY26 pay group, whatever, start date July 1, and you've got this fabulous worksheet. Okay. Any questions on the grid itself or doing mass copy compensations? No? Okay. Again, the single one, bringing in the single one, right? You are manually going in and updating that record. The mass copy, even though it brings in a whole pay group or a group of people, depending on how you bring those in, you're still manually going in and touching each record, okay? Making sure you click on clear before you do that, okay? Let's say you bring in some people, and let's say this Faith Wood down here, she's not coming back next year. Easy. Okay. I don't want you to worry about that saying, I really don't want to bring that in. So how do I do that? So all you have to do, you have a couple options. You can click on delete here to get her out, or maybe you have already done new contracts and you find out somebody's leaving, right? Still, you're good. As long as you haven't activated them, you can get them out of here. You can delete that record here, or you can select this action button over here, and you'll notice those two things are not action right now because they're not darkened. If I select that, then I can delete that record out of here. Okay. All right. Good deal. All right. This mass change, I want to talk about this real briefly. There are mass change scripts out there. There's none loaded in our demo right now, but let's say you need to go out and update some field that's in the new contract area. Maybe it's going to be hours and day. Maybe you forgot to add them in there. Maybe they weren't on your import, or when you were doing things you forgot, or maybe you forgot to flag stretch pay, like I did earlier. Okay, that mass change is for those types of scripts, just like in any other grid. Okay. All right, option 3 is going to be, I'm going to delete these peeps out of here, is going to be our import. This is definitely fiscal team's recommendation to districts. If it's your first time doing it, you let us know and we can walk you through that. There is a template out there that can be used. And before I get into that, I want to go through that new contract import template. Let me grab that. I don't know where my files went, so that's cool. Yeah, let me close some windows here. There we go. It was hidden behind all the lovely people's faces. Could not see it. Pardon the interruption. All right. Can you guys see the spreadsheet on the screen? Yeah, okay, good deal. Thank you, Carol. Okay, so let's review this, okay? There's a link out there, and all you have to do is there is an extract report And most districts probably have it already in their reports manager. I'll show you what it looks like. And what it is a template. It's an extract template. So you import that into your application. So if I go to reports, report manager, you're going to see new contract compensation worksheet. Okay. So if you don't already have that, it could be named something different than this, but it's going to be a new contract compensation extract worksheet, could be called a couple different things. Okay. When you download that or import it into your USPS application, that report can be run and you can pull in certain pay groups. Again, why it's important to have your pay groups in order. And then you can make all of these changes that I'm going to review here. Okay. This is something that I created last year. It's something that I can put back out on our website because I'm not sure if it's out there anymore. But basically, I added notes across the way. So this row right here is going to be the records, the header records that are necessary for an import. Okay. So that extract report that you just saw, there's actually a couple headers that still need to be changed. So I just want to be able to review this with you. Okay. So in this format, it's obviously brought in our employee ID. This is a required field for new contracts. Okay. These are fields that come in by default on the SST3 abstract. As I stated, more fields are available, and that is on that new contract link that I sent everyone in chat. Okay. Last name, first name, we're not going to use that on our load later, our CSV file, so that's why it's not highlighted. Job number, of course, that's position number. Contract type, okay? You see we have some notes here down below, okay? So in contract type, this either has to be a value of a 4 or it has to say new contract, and it is fussy. Okay. It does not like it if you do not capitalize or you're not supposed to capitalize. So it has to state, good gravy, my typing skills. It has to be one of those two values, either for or a non-contract. Okay. So we could come in, the easy thing to do is for. Oops, got very giddy right there. All right. Next thing is this will come in on that report that you import into your USPS as just compensation label, okay? Because it's the old one. So we have to change the header to say new compensation label, okay? Again, that is going to be very fussy. A reminder that's seen on pay slips and in future, okay? And if you say, what's future? Just a reminder, when you go into payroll future, that's what I'm talking about, okay? So it's super helpful, especially for our payroll people during the months of July and August, to put that fiscal year in front on that label. Because remember, we've not archived last year's compensations until after the final staff EMIS collection and STRS advance has finished. Okay. So what's going to happen is for my July and August people, we're going to have two compensations sitting out there, one for FY25 and FY26. So ensuring that you put the FY26 in front of that is going to help you so much when you go to pay these people extra stuff. In future, you're going to be able to distinguish which compensation you should be paying that on. Okay, so super helpful. All right, so it's going to bring in the calendar type. Okay, we're not changing it. This can stay the same, so we're going to leave that. If, remember, I gave you that scenario of teachers, you have your regular teachers and part-time. As long as it came in from last year and it has that right calendar, you don't need to change it. But maybe you have a teacher that is changing the calendar. You can update it on this import, and that will update when you import that in. Compensation description, okay? This can stay the same, the header. It's just the label that has to change. And here's an easy trick. And done. Okay. Now, this is all related to compensation. There is an area later on when we get into position description that we'll talk a little bit more about. Okay. Maybe in compensation description and even in your label. Maybe you want to come in here and throw in HS, okay? Because they're at the high school, okay? You can do things like that. Because again, this is the compensation, the contract from year to year. It's the position that stays the same. So maybe you want to be a little more definitive here. It brought in, or we are assigning our start dates and our stop dates for compensation. Again, remember, even though it says contract start and stop, it's actually the compensation start and stop. Pay units not changing. I just caught a typo. It's not bugger, it's bigger. All right, moving on. Unit amount. We are going to clear this field. Again, the reason I show you option 1 on new contracts and option 2 on new contracts is the great thing about new contract import is if we just put the contract amount in, the rest of it's going to calculate for us. So we have this note here. The unit amount will still be calculated for contract compensations when the new contract is imported, even if the start and stop dates are populated or the user provides contract days in the profile. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come in here, take out the old values, and we're good. Okay. I am going to update the retire hours because I noticed that wasn't on the other. Okay. Again, we're in a demo account, so it's kind of, it's like a roll of the dice in here. Okay. The pay per period. Again, same kind of a note. The pay per period will be calculated. So we're going to remove this. Again, I can't reiterate enough. We want the system to do the calculation for us because it's going to double check our math. I don't know about you, but I was never that confident, okay, to think that, I had it better than the system could calculate. So we want to make sure the system's calculating that. I'm going to remove the obligation as well. Okay. Again, this user contract type, this is district defined. This is not one that you have to use. If it's not one that you use, get it out of there, right? You don't have to bring that field in. It's not required. Okay. So why have the noise in there if you don't need it? Again, make sure that if you're biweekly, this says 26 for all of your employees. If you're semi-monthly, it says 24. Okay. The equal pays. Okay, I don't know where my note went for this, but on these fields here, in fact, I'm going to add this note here, must be a value of, it has to be a value of yes or no here. I don't know where my note went on this, but it cannot say true or false. Anything that's true or false on this import must be a value of yes or no. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make these changes. Okay. These are all stretch pay, so they're all yes, and update that. Sorry about that. I don't know where my note went for that. Okay. I'm glad I remembered it. Salary schedule. If you're folks that use a salary schedule outside of, like you track that stuff outside of there, these are the 3 fields that you're going to use for that. If you are a district that does not use that, okay, get rid of them. You don't need them if you don't use them. Okay. If you have questions, ask us. We'll let you know before you go getting all giddy removing fields. Okay. Here is our calendar start date. Again, this should mimic what your compensation, your contract start date should be. Okay. Calendar start always should be the first work day of that year. Calendar stop, again, per the SSDT, leave blank until the employee is no longer working at that district. Okay. Hours in the day. Job title. Okay. Job title is also your position. Remember, job was from Classic. They still have not changed this header, which is fine as long as we know the interpretation. Job title will also update the position description field on the position record when the new contract is activated. Again, this is one of those things you're not going to see it in the grid change until you hit activate. Many districts are going to a more simpler position description and allowing more information to be done on the compensation record from year to year. Okay. So you may have somebody that's working maintenance. Okay. So their position title, okay, or position description is going to see maintenance. And then their compensations from year to year can have different descriptions if you want, right? Because it's more related to that year. So if you're looking to update and streamline your position descriptions, now's the time to do that. Okay. This start date and this stop date, these are related to the position records. I'm going to show you real quick here. If we go out to new contracts and we go down to import new contracts, there is, bear with me, this is the field descriptions. Okay. This is where you're going to find the headers. This is where you're going to find what should be the headers and what it impacts and what record it impacts. Okay. Whether it's an employee record, position record, or compensation record. Okay. So again, 9 times out of 10, this comes in on the import from the SSDT. But if you don't want to change those, you can get rid of those fields. Okay. Position code. Let's say next year they're going from that 230 to 212 that I mentioned earlier. This is where you would update those, okay? Here's the key, okay? If, let's say this person, I know these codes are whack compared to the ones that we're doing right here, but again, remember this is a demo account. For example, let's say this 209, okay, is going to go to a 502. I do not want to clear out the rest of these fields. Here's what's going to happen if I remove this. That's then going to import a blank. I don't want to remove my EMIS position codes. So if you're saying I only want this one changed or only want this one changed, that's fine. Go in and change those, okay? But don't remove the rest of them, assuming, no, I don't want to change to these, so I'm going to clear them, okay? Just leave them as is and just change the ones that you feel need changed, okay? And then we have that note down here. And then I have my if column, okay? So remember I spoke about clearing out the EMIS override fields on the position record, right? SSDT, I'm still waiting for them to get back on me on this because when I imported these fields, which is these are the override fields, sorry, but I also thought, well, I might as well throw in the full-time equivalency too in case you're changing that. So I tested all 4 of these headers and it didn't change it in my new contract grid, but from everything I read and when I tested it, it did when I hit activate. So I just want to get clarity from SSDT that I'm not missing something or if they have a fix in place so that we can see those valid records moving forward. So that's why I have this if in here, but I did add those to this. So I will save this and put this out on our website if anybody would like to reference back to this and some of the notes that are on here. Okay. Any questions on this new contract extract report from the SSDT? Well, I know I couldn't have done that good a job. Okay. So everybody's got questions. Everybody's afraid to ask. That's fine. We'll go with that. So let me show you, if you don't already have that report in your application, it can be found again on that new contracts link that I sent everybody in chat. And if you click on import, remember we were looking at that header at the top. Sorry, I'm going to scroll, so my apologies. If you click on import new contracts and you scroll down just a little bit, right here's what you're looking for. It's called new contract compensation worksheet. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go into your account. You're going to go to reports, report manager. you're going to click on import report and you're going to pull that in from your downloads area or wherever that report went. Okay. When I pulled mine in, I just happened to label it 2025. I could have labeled it FY26, but I like keeping track of when I brought that worksheet in. It's not that you can't use it from year to year. I just kind of like keeping track of that. Okay. And then, so we've got this imported. Okay. How do we get our information to come out? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our download. I came in and I set a save and recall. So let's talk about that. I don't know about you guys, but I don't pull everybody in at once. I like things in a nice little box with a bow on top. So I pulled in just my pay group for my 260 peeps. Okay. I just want to deal with them first. I kept it in Excel data and I gave my report a name. That way I don't have to name it later. Okay. And then I went over here and my pay group is called 260 July 1 start. Now I will tell you, if you just put 260 in there, it won't work. You really have to put your pay group specifics name in there. So you might have to copy and paste to get it all right. And then I generated my report. Okay. So the people that you just saw on my demo for that spreadsheet are these people in raw format. Okay. So now I need to go in and make my changes. Okay. So that's what it's going to come in looking like. So you're going to be able to compare this to that template that I just went over with you. Okay. Any questions? This is the next best thing to sliced bread, right? Bringing in groups like this where you can mass change things. Yep. Sarah, great question. What I'm going to do is I will put that on our fiscal services page under USPS and under, I don't think we have a new contracts folder. So I'm going to put that in the spreadsheet templates folder. Okay.
You have one in there from last year, Heidi, or from a couple of years ago, I guess.
I need to get that out of there because I think I've added more notes. So thank you, Carol. Yeah, you're right.
It
Yep.
does look similar to the one you were showing earlier.
Yeah. Cool. Sweet. Yep. Does that work, Sarah? All right. All right. So you saw an example of that import. Okay. So once you get all of that done, okay, once you get all of your data in there, you've run your math. Remember, when we have this, okay, and we have our obligation in there, and maybe you create a master sheet, like you go ahead and clear out these totals for unit amount, pay per period, obligation, right? You get a grand total for all of your contracts for that group. Maybe you then copy all this data over into a second sheet and you do your own math that way, right? Break down the totals by yourself, okay? But once you get this sheet to where it's just the fields that you need and the required fields that you have to have, you need to save this as a CSV. Okay, once you save that as a CSV, here's what you're going to do. We're going to go into import new contracts. Okay, I've already done it to save time. I'm going to go to choose file. I'm going to pull in my CSV form. I'm going to open. Okay, you do not need to put in a contract start date unless your spreadsheet has multiple contract start dates. Okay. So the point of this is I just have one group and they all have the same start date. So I can ignore that contract start date option. Okay. By putting it in here, it's not going to add that to my spreadsheet. This is more used as a filtering tool. So let's say I had August people, or excuse me, I had July 1st people in there and maybe August 1st people in there. I could designate, please only pull my July 1st people. But in this case, I only have that. So I'm going to do import. Oh, thank goodness. I tested this a ton to make sure we didn't have any errors. But if you do have an error, if you've ever done attendance or whatever like that, you know that an error report um, pops up and it shows you what the error is at the end. Okay. I got a report, but there's nothing on it. So again, it tells me that all the records were added. So again, pop quiz. When we add records into new contract, they land in the contract maintenance pool. Okay. So there's all my peeps. Okay. Now this time I don't have to go into every record and make manual changes on each one. Now, all I have to do, because I have my grid set up fabulously, right, is come in and go, yep, that's the right total, yep, the right total, yep, the right total, or I'm going to come run a report. This is my test 260 people, okay? I'm going to generate that report. And I'm going to come check math, right? So here's my paper period. Remember that little cheat I was telling you about? Equals sum. Now, when I do my first pay in July, when I pay these people for the first time, my pay group 260 July 1 start, that's my total on my pay report. Okay? Any questions on that? I'd like to hear from my new people that are shy. You can just give a thumbs up. How many are liking this new contract import option? Hi, Sarah, you're super excited about everything, and I love that. Thank you. All right, we have shy new people, and that's okay. Kelly, yay! Awesome. Yes, it is. Awesome. Good. So again, if you all need help with this, once you do it the first couple times, like that's why it's nice doing July contracts and on August contracts because they're smaller groups of people, right? That's going to give you much more experience for when you do the bulk of your people, aides, cooks, bus drivers, teachers, right? Don't eat the elephant in one bite. Okay, small bites gets the job done. Okay. All right, good deal. And then you could use this as your total sheet throughout the year if you have updates, changes, however you do business. Okay. So then you're all giddy, right? You have run your reports. You are like busting your arm because you are patting yourself on the back because everything you're like, praise goodness, like this looks great. I'm ready to go. Okay. So when do I activate, right? Again, we have a lot of new people on the call. So from experience, the districts that I work with, I know we may have a handful out there that activate prior to the last pay on contract, but the majority of districts, in fact, I'm going to say all the districts that I work with, they activate these new contracts after the FY25 is paid off. Okay? There is an option that you can activate these beforehand. And if that's something you want to entertain, you let us know and we'll walk through how that's going to look because it's going to look a lot different than if you let one pay off and you activate the next one. Okay. I'm not going to get in the weeds about that because honestly, it'll panic some people and I don't want to do that. So traditionally, the time to do this is pay off your FY25. So the group I'm working with right here obviously is July 1st ones, right? You're going to pay off their last contract at the end of June, right? And then once that's all done and settled, then you can activate these records, right? And move forward. When you activate, okay, it is going to make them live, okay? But before you activate, so I want everybody making themselves a big note. Before you get giddy and hit activate, let's visit salary notices. Okay. salary notices, not that they must be run before you activate, because there is a plan B, it's just not as easy. Okay. To get salary notices done, salary notices looks at what is in new contract maintenance grid. Okay, so let's go take a peek at that. Okay, so for these, okay, the output file name, again, if you're doing these by groups, take advantage of this. I'm going to do July 1 start 260 salary notices. Okay, that's not going to print on their salary notices. The statement date, whatever you want it to be, I'm just leaving it today. The employee number, I'm going to do by name. Okay, the school year, that's going to get updated. Double check that to make sure it's right. Now, this is filtering. Okay, if you hover over it, it's going to say select only new contract compensations with a start date on or after. So remember, your new contract maintenance grid, that pool, right? It could have 10 different pay groups in there and they all have different contract starts. But you don't want to do your salary notices for all of them. Okay, that's when you would come in here and put the start date for that group. Okay, so again, this is a filtering tool. Or you can filter by appointment type. We're not going to do that. You can also select just specific employees if you want. You can, remember, if you do this, it gives you options to say, okay, which employees. Or you can do by certain pay groups. Again, maybe you have 10 different pay groups in there and you only want to do your 260s. Okay, you can do that. Do you want to include district information on the salary notice? Yes or no. Okay, and then you can update that information. Okay. I'm going to use the default form that is in here. Many districts already have a customized salary notice. You're going to know because when you come in here and you do this drop down, they're going to be listed. Okay, so you can always test these. Okay, so as long as you have folks in your new contract maintenance pool, you can come out here and test your salary notices. I wish they would move this email salary notices like clear over here to the right because I like to fat finger stuff. But as long as you're generating a salary notice, it's just for you to review and print if you keep those on file or you save those, right? I would always recommend that once you get everything good and you're feeling good, you generate salary notices. You're going to look at these salary notices. Okay, again, it's default. I'm going to make sure the date's good. My employee number's on there. There's my employee. Yes, it's for this year. Yes, that's the amount, 260 days. Yes, it's going to start there. Dot, dot, done. Okay, and you check all of them. If they all look good, the recommendation would be save this file in your FY26 contract information. Okay, because if you ever need to go reprint, you can always grab one of these, but you can also go to one of your employees from the dashboard and do that. And I'll share that in a little bit. Okay. Then once everything is good and you've checked everything, you can then email those salary notices. This email salary notices works as long as they have a valid email on their employee record. Okay. Any questions on salary notices? Is it possible to personalize the salary notice to include all the board paid amounts? Yes. Our salary notices show their contract amount. Yes. Just send in a help desk ticket, Sherry, and your team can help you customize that to get those fields on there. And I think, I can't remember if they come in red or they come in asterisk, but I believe there is a way to add those to that. You are very welcome. Yep, you're most welcome. Yep. So again, big reminder, it's so much easier to when you're doing your checklist, which takes me to my next point. There is a new contract checklist. So let me put this link in our chat. I think it was Melissa that asked before everybody was on, are there handouts today? No, there's not handouts, but there's links. So that gives you the the best and most up-to-date information that we have on any of that. So handouts, especially this new in the game on redesign, although we're getting to that period where things aren't changing so much, we were having to update and change every year. So SSDT has done a fabulous job with the redesign wiki documents, and they are great about taking our suggestions as well. Okay, so again, doing that. Now, I do want to show you, let's say you have an oopsie and you got uber giddy and you activate it, right? You activated, I'm going to pick on Morgan, and I activated her compensation. Oh, this is for, oh, who asked that earlier? I can't remember now. Gosh, I'm so sorry. You ask about why didn't I check the primary compensation flags? Let me cancel that for a second. Let's go in and view that. That new primary compensation, you can add this to your import as well. It just wasn't on my sheet. Gosh, I wish I could remember who asked that. You can check mark this when you're updating or editing your compensations. But if, let's say, you forgot and you didn't do it, it wasn't on your import, and you know darn well you didn't do any of them, okay? When you go to activate, it's going to ask you that question. Are you sure you want to activate one contract, as if you're not scared enough, and then transfer, because remember, you can only have primary compensation on one compensation record. So transfer means from the old compensation record to the new one. And I'm going to click yes. So that's going to automatically set that flag. So to whoever asked that question earlier, hopefully that helps you, my friend, because I missed it on the import. Ah, thank you, Missy. I thought it started with an M. Thank you, thank you. So hopefully that helps. You're most welcome. All right. Now, for my Morgan, okay, let's see. Again, I got giddy. I activated. I'm like, dang it. I want to do salary notice. Well, she's not in the pool anymore. That's okay. Let's go find little Miss Morgan over here. Okay. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to go to her compensations. Now you can also do this if you have a mass of people that you did. You can also do it from core and compensations. But if I click on, where's her new one? See it right here, FY26. There's her new one. If I go into view, there's the salary notice option. Okay. I can now do a salary notice. Again, same options I had before. If I had multiple outside my, and I can generate that. Okay. So there's a saving grace right there. Okay. That's if you had individual ones. So let me show you if you accidentally got giddy and did a whole group of people. If we go to compensation, contract compensation, because again, for my new people out there, gosh, I didn't talk about this. New contract area is only for contract compensations, not non-contract compensations. Okay. I'm just so afraid I'm going to miss handing you guys some information there. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to filter by my 260 people. Okay. These are all my peeps that were in new contract. Let's say I activated them and I forgot to do salary notices. Check this action right here. I can now do salary notices from, well, not now, this was available last year, but you can do them here. So there's always a saving grace, but if you have a process down, right, it's best to use your process altogether. Okay, it is a great save. Yes, you're most welcome. All right, some things that I want to make sure to cover was, let me see if I can find. Okay, not, dear goodness, where was it going? There we go. Creating non-contract compensations. Okay. I told you I would briefly touch on this. This is again another worksheet that if you don't have it in your application, you can download. So I'm going to go ahead and download that. Oh, it took me to the library. That's interesting. Fab. Let's try that again. Pardon the interruption. I'm not sure why things are so incredibly slow on the wiki today, so my apologies. You should be able to download this and import that into, again, your reports manager, okay? And then what you can do is you can pull out your subs. Let's say you have sub cooks, sub aides, sub bus drivers, they all have different rates. You can actually then go to utilities and mass load and update their rates if they change from year to year. So again, that's the new contract compensation or new non-contract compensation worksheet to use for that for mass loads. Let me see what else I failed to talk about. We talked about clearing the EMIS override. We talked about start and stop dates, meta links, and the payroll accounts. Looks like we have a couple questions. So I use position 2 for extended day contracts. So how do I pull compensation 2 into the spreadsheet to update? So, right, uh, I don't believe you can. For some reason, I read that, like when you go in and you pull in that employee, Carrie, and you do copy and that employee comes in, you only see the one position and the one compensation, yes? Because is your compensation 2, is it a non-contract or is it a contract? Please feel free to unmute yourself if you wish. While she's typing or getting ready to unmute, Missy's question, when contracts are imported into new contracts, do the calculations for unit amount show in the maintenance? Absolutely they do. Yep, nope, great question, Miss Missy. So these folks that are in here now, remember the last thing that I did was an import, right? So as long as you've gone to the more area, Missy, and you've pulled in the new unit amount, the new per pay period, it did the calc. And remember, I didn't add contract obligation in my spreadsheet, right? I left that blank. The only total I added was my contract amount. When it imports, the system does the calculations. I went to the more area, pulled those in, and wham, right there it is, my friend. So you'll be able to see everything, and you're perfectly fine. Yep. So Carrie says it is contract. Ooh, it is contract and stretch pay. Yeah. So yeah, Sarah, thank you for that suggestion. If they are in a different pay group, that may be helpful for your extended pay people on those compensations. Carrie, thank you for that question. Okay, Dawn has asked, I have the same extended day situation and I see the job too, extended days and new contract maintenance. It is contract for us too. Yes, you're welcome, Missy. And Dawn, I would revert, Sarah's got some experience with that. You may want to look at putting your extended ones in a different pay group, but that would mean putting it in a, that would mean putting, well, they're all on position 2. So the only thing you would really have to look at is, let's say they're teachers and you want to keep them in the teacher group, we would have to look at how to pull that into new contract. So that might be a good help desk question, because I know I don't have that scenario or case in my demo, but I do appreciate that and I can understand where you're coming from. So my thing would be, again, when you come in to do copy, I mean, just to test it out, I would make sure that you could, like you pull in your employee. This one only has one position. Let me pull in Bailey again, because I know she had 2. See, okay, so and these are both contracts. So position one is coming in. It's listing both of them here. So you should be able to, according to what I'm seeing here, pull in your regular teaching or whatever the regular contract is, and then you would just have to add them again with the extended day one. But as far as an import, I don't know how. I would have to test that. I'd have to test on that worksheet the SSDT gives us and make sure they both come in. But here's the thing, if only one of them comes in, you could always come in and manually add in your extended ones. If you have them in a spreadsheet, couldn't you import them with a specific position number? Yeah, but they share the same position number. Like in her case and in my case here, hers are position 2, mine are position 1. And remember, it's looking at the compensation itself. I would think it would pull in all associated contract compensations, but it would be an easy test. It'd be an easy test. Great questions. Super great questions. Anyone else? Anything for the good of the cause? Team, do you have anything? Anything I have forgotten, not covered? I tried to go at a slow enough pace that it was understandable, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so I've shown you what it means to activate. I showed you what that looks like on an employee record. Remember, I activated Morgan's. So when I did that, whoops, I must have gotten out of Morgan's screen. So when you activate those compensations, you'll notice until we can go in and archive last year's, but again, a reminder to all USPS people, do not archive any old compensations until after your final staff collection has been completed and any amendments done by your EMIS people, and not or, and your STRS advance is complete. Okay, you'll notice I activated that new one, so she's got 2 existing out here. Okay, so this is why descriptions are super helpful. Let me show you real quickly. If I go to payroll payments future, and I pull in, just giving you an example here. If I pull in Morgan Bailey, I want you to see this. This is why that label is so important, especially in July and August. See how helpful you've just made things for yourself? Okay. Real brief thing, we've got 2 position 1s, but you know when you come in here, you want to pick this one if you're paying for next year. I'm not going to worry about the L because we don't have a whole lot of L's out there. But how many have ever noticed the C and the NC? Okay. Virtual Easter chocolate. For anybody who wants to tell me what the C and the NC are here. Contract is C and Jennifer, you get the virtual chocolate. She was the first to reply, but Susan's also correct. So this is going to help you to know which is which, okay? Because you could have a position that has contract and a non-contract record tied to it, okay? Make sure you're selecting the right one, okay? And you've given yourselves these simple little cheats and you didn't even know you did. All right, final call. Final call for any questions, comments, or concerns, anything from any of our districts or our staff. I don't know what question that was, Susan. Let me go look here. When I brought in the new contract compensation worksheet, it brought in tons of people that are no longer here. You absolutely can. Yeah, so Susan's question, I think Sarah actually helped to answer that. Yes, if you bring in that worksheet, that comes from, where you're going to grab everybody that I showed earlier, Anybody that's not returning next year, anybody you don't want, dump them off, right? Dump them off that sheet. And then even when you get them into this grid area, you can still kick people out of the pool, okay? And then they're not going to activate. So, good deal. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to stop the recording.